Hello and welcome to the big story, and I'm Sandeep. In a high-stakes diplomatic gathering at the White House, US President Donald Trump hosted Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy alongside a group of influential European leaders in what has been described as one of the most significant political meetings regarding the Russia-Ukraine war since its outbreak in 2022. And what would be the outcome? What would be the further proceedings? And how it went on? This is the big story of the day. The summit came at a pivotal moment in the ongoing conflict amid fears that momentum towards peace may involve compromise on Ukraine's sovereignty. With Trump recently emerging from a direct meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, global attention was fixed on whether Trump would press Zelensky towards peace negotiations that might involve controversial territorial concessions. The presence of European leaders, including UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen was intended to ensure that Ukraine was not isolated in these deliberations and that any discussions about the ceasefire or peace roadmap would be collectively shaped by Ukraine's Western alliance.
That was not a great day. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
The meeting followed an earlier, more private and tense Oval Office conversation between Trump and Zelensky in February 2025, during which Trump reportedly laid out a draft framework of security guarantees for Ukraine, possibly mirroring NATO-like protections in exchange for some flexibility on contested territories. At that time, Zelensky referred to the discussion as very good, though sources indicated it included difficult topics, including how to handle Russian control over the occupied regions. That meeting, though not resulting in immediate announcements, set the stage for a broader multilateral involvement and drew concerns from European capitals about the direction of the US diplomacy under Trump's leadership. That made the latest meeting even more crucial as it brought together key transatlantic voices to push for unified peace process.
Країн, які будуть допомагати, координувати, а також будуть учасниками гарантій безпеки для України. Я вважаю, що це великий крок вперед. Я не можу поки що сказати, як буде, всіх деталей, але це вже важливо, що є політична воля і є політичне рішення. Дуже добре розбираючись в кожному нашому квадратному кілометрі, залитому, вибачте, кров'ю наших бійців. І для мене це дуже чутливий момент. Я хотів про це. Мені здається, що президент почув і бачив це, і ми були різні моменти, але це важлива інформація. І тому питання територій це питання, яке ми залишимо між мною і країн, які будуть допомагати, координувати, а також будуть учасниками гарантій.
European leaders at the White House expressed a clear sense of urgency and unity during their joint appearance with Trump and Zelensky. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer described the day as very important, emphasizing that no prior effort had brought the war to such a turning point. The Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been at the White House for talks with Donald Trump, Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders. Sir Starmer has hailed real progress made during the White House summit with European leaders aimed at bringing an end to the war in Ukraine. The Prime Minister was one of the several European leaders, including Zelenskiy, French President Macron and NATO Secretary General Marcon, in attendance for the discussions in Washington.
Can I start where Emmanuel started, which is we all want peace. The war in Ukraine has had a huge impact, particularly on the Ukrainians who've borne the brunt of it, but it's also had an impact on Europe and on the United Kingdom. There's not a family or community that hasn't been affected. And when we talk about security, we're talking about the security not just of Ukraine, we're talking about the security of Europe and the United Kingdom as well, which is why this is such an important issue. I think this is such an important meeting. As a group, I think we've had a discussion on the phone a number of times, Mr. President, but be able now to be around the table to take it forward. And I really feel that we can, I think, with the right approach this afternoon, make real progress, particularly on the security guarantees, and your indication of security guarantees, of some sort of Article 5 style guarantees, fits with what we've been doing with the Coalition of the Willing, which we started some months ago, bringing countries together.
Well, the overall day and the meetings were really productive, and there was a real sense of unity between the European leaders that were here, and President Trump and President Zelenskiy, and then two material outcomes. Firstly, on security guarantees, this is a really central issue, and out of today, all the teams are working together on security guarantees. So that's the Coalition of the Willing, where we've already got 30 countries now working with the US, and we've tasked our teams to do the detail on that security guarantee over the course of coming days. So really a real sense of urgency there. And then a recognition that on issues of territory, that's a matter for Ukraine, and hence the call with President Putin, and the agreement that will be a bilateral between President Putin and President Zelensky.
European leaders cautiously welcomed this proposal, though many, including Macron and Merz, suggested that any meaningful peace agreement would likely require either European involvement in the negotiation room or clear guarantees that European positions would be reflected. French President Macron commended Trump for convening the group and voiced support for the idea of a future trilateral summit involving Trump, Putin and Zelensky, calling it the only way to find a workable resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President, for organizing this meeting and for your commitment. And everything was said, but I just have to say here, everybody around this table is in favor of peace. And we work very hard, and we've worked very hard during the past few years to have a peace which is a robust and long-standing peace. This is why the idea of a trilateral meeting is very important, because this is the only way to fix it. And by the way, I think as a follow-up, we would need probably a quadrilateral meeting, because when we speak about security guarantees, we speak about the whole security of the European continent. And this is why we are all united here with Ukraine on this matter. In order to organize such a trilateral meeting, your idea to ask for a truce or ceasefire, at least to stop the killings, as we discussed, is a necessity. And we all support this idea. And in order to have such a long-standing peace for Ukraine and for the whole continent, we do need these security guarantees. And the first one is clearly a credible Ukrainian army for the years and decades to come. And the second one is our own commitments, all of us. And we worked very hard during the past few months among the coalition of the willings, with the support of NATO, to build the different pillars of security guarantees and our commitments. And you can be sure that Europeans are very lucid about the fact that they have their fair share in these security guarantees for Ukraine, but their own security is clearly at stake in this situation. So you can count on us, as we can count on you, in order to deliver this robust peace for both Ukraine and Europe.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni stated that meeting marked the beginning of a new phase in diplomacy and created the shift in momentum to Trump's direct engagement. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz underscored the need for a ceasefire as a precondition for any further talks, stating that unequivocally the next meeting cannot happen without a ceasefire.
Well, thank you very much, Donald, Mr. President, for hosting us today in this important meeting. And I think it is an important day, a new phase, after 3 years and a half that we didn't see any kind of sign from the Russian side that there was a willing for dialogue. So something is changing, something has changed, thanks to you, thanks also to the stalling in the battlefield, which was achieved with the bravery of Ukrainians and with the unity that we all provided to Ukraine. And the reason why I mention it is that we also have to remind that if we want to reach peace and if we want to guarantee justice, we have to do it united. So that's why it's a very good day, the one we are in. You can obviously count on Italy as it was from the beginning. We are on the side of Ukraine, and we do absolutely support your efforts towards peace. We will talk about many important topics. The first one is security guarantees, how to be sure that it won't happen again, which is the precondition of every kind of peace. I'm happy that we will discuss about that. I'm happy that we will begin from a proposal, which is the, let's say, Article 5 model, which was Italian at the beginning. So we are always ready to bring our proposals for peace, for dialogue. It's something we have to build together to guarantee peace and to defend the security of our nation. So thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us.
Thank you very much.
Washington. The next steps ahead are the more complicated ones now. The path is open. You opened it last Friday. But now the way is open for complicated negotiations. And to be honest, we all would like to see a ceasefire, the latest from the next meeting on. I can't imagine that the next meeting would take place without a ceasefire. So let's work on that, and let's try to put pressure on Russia, because the credibility of these efforts we are undertaking today are depending on at least a ceasefire from the beginning of the serious negotiations from next step on. So I would like to emphasize this aspect and would like to see a ceasefire from the next meeting, which should be a trilateral meeting wherever it takes place.
Well, we're going to let the president go over and talk to the president, and we'll see how that works out, and if we can do that. I will say, and again I say it, in the 6 wars that I've settled, I haven't had a ceasefire. We just got into negotiations, and one of the wars was, as you know, in the Congo was 31 years long. Another one that we settled last week with 2 great countries was 35 years going on, and we had no ceasefire. So if we can do the ceasefire, great. And if we don't do a ceasefire, because many other points were given to us, many points were given to us, great.
Apart from the country heads, 2 group heads have also joined this particular meeting. One is European Union head and another is the NATO head. Now, as we all know that this all particular war has started when Ukraine wanted to join the NATO, and European Union first imposing the sanctions on Russia, because Russia being a country in European Union, but they wanted to form a government or a group like previous Soviet Union. Russian President Vladimir Putin wanted all the previous Soviet Union to form a group which would be an alternative to the NATO alliance, and so that he can dominate in his part. The European Union chief Ursula von der Leyen stressed the need for just and lasting peace and highlighted humanitarian concerns, particularly the forced deportation of Ukrainian children by Russian forces. On the other hand, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte thanked Trump for helping break a year-long deadlock and urged all parties to build on the momentum.
Thank you. And we did. I was just thinking we're here for a different reason, but we just a couple of weeks ago made the largest trade deal in history. So that's a big thing, and congratulations. That's great. Thank you very much, Ursula. Mr. Chancellor from Germany, a very great leader.
Mr. President, dear Donald, many thanks for having us today. I think this is extremely helpful that we are meeting and hearing that the two of you are having such a good meeting today here in Washington. The next steps ahead are the more complicated ones now. The path is open. You opened it last Friday. But now the way is open for complicated negotiations. And to be honest, we all would like to see a ceasefire, the latest from the next meeting on. I can't imagine that the next meeting would take place without a ceasefire. So let's work on that, and let's try to put pressure on Russia, because the credibility of these efforts we are undertaking today are depending on at least a ceasefire from the beginning of the serious negotiations from next step on. So I would like to emphasize this aspect and would like to see a ceasefire from the next meeting, which should be a trilateral meeting wherever it takes place.
With President Putin by starting that dialogue, and I think it was in February that you had the first phone call, and from there we are now where we are today, and that is, I think, if we play this well, we could end this, and we have to end this. We have to stop the killing, we have to stop the destruction of Ukraine's infrastructure. It is a terrible war, so I'm really excited, and let's make the best out of today and make sure that from today onwards, we get this thing to an end as soon as possible. I really want to thank you for your leadership, what you are doing for Volodymyr, but of course also all the European colleagues. It is really crucial. And the fact that you have said, I'm willing to participate in the security guarantees is a big step. It's really a breakthrough, and it makes all the difference. So also thank you for that.
Well, NATO also has agreed from 2% to 5%, which is something that is a massive amount of money. And it's 2% that wasn't always paid to 5% that is paid. That's a big difference. And so we appreciate that. That was a great move. Thank you.
As discussion went on, Trump announced that he had already spoken to Putin by phone from the White House, and that bilateral Zelenskiy-Putin meeting was being arranged within next 2 weeks. This raised anticipation of potential trilateral summit between Trump, Zelensky and Putin in near future, a concept Trump himself endorsed. And on the other hand, when this particular meeting went on, Finland's President Alexander Stubb delivered a powerful speech stressing historic lessons from the Finland's wartime past and backing US-European efforts to secure Ukraine's future. Highlighting the progress made in the recent weeks, Stubb expressed confidence that peace is possible in 2025. US President Trump followed by saying Putin may also want an answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for hosting us here. Can I start where Emmanuel started, which is we all want peace. The war in Ukraine has had a huge impact, particularly on the Ukrainians who've borne the brunt of it, but it's also had an impact on Europe and on the United Kingdom. There's not a family or community that hasn't been affected. And when we talk about security, we're talking about the security not just of Ukraine, we're talking about the security of Europe and the United Kingdom as well, which is why this is such an important issue. I think this is such an important meeting. As a group, I think we've had a discussion on the phone a number of times, Mr. President, but be able now to be around the table to take it forward. And I really feel that we can, I think, with the right approach this afternoon, make real progress, particularly on the security guarantees, and your indication of security guarantees of some sort of Article 5 style guarantees fits with what we've been doing with the Coalition of the Willing, which we started some months ago, bringing countries together and showing that we were prepared to step up to the plate when it came to security. With you coming alongside, the US alongside what we've already developed, I think we could take a real...
Very much, and you know, it's very interesting because this is the first for the White House. You can't say that very often. It's seen a lot over the years, since 1800, 1799, to be almost exact. But this is the first where we've had so many prime ministers, presidents, the heads of European nations. And by the way, Alex, I'd like you to say a couple of words too. You're a young, powerful man. Before I finish up, I want you to say a couple of words. Go ahead.
Thank you.
The issue of ceasefire remains a critical sticking point. While European leaders insist on cessation of hostilities as a minimum precondition, Trump appeared more flexible, focusing instead on building security structures and trust between the parties before enforcing a pause in the fighting. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte praised President Trump as a pragmatic peacemaker for his role in facilitating the talks with Ukraine and European leaders. Rutte highlighted Trump's pressure on NATO spending weapons support for Ukraine and diplomatic outreach to Putin as key steps towards resolving the ongoing conflict.
Really breaking the deadlock in February, started the conversation with President Putin. He was the only one who could do that. And then we had a very successful NATO summit in The Hague, the 5%. This was a clear signal, not only that Europe and the US are united and that the Europeans are now spending more and equalizing their spending with the US, but also a signal to Moscow that we are serious. And then I was here 5 weeks ago and the president deciding to let the flow of lethal weapons into Ukraine continue, paid for by the Europeans, and also putting now secondary sanctions on India. I think that was all very important, and today was really about security guarantees, US getting more involved there, and all the details to be hammered out over the coming days, but also to work towards a trilateral between the two presidents, Zelenskiy and Trump, with President Putin, preceded first by a bilateral meeting between...
Looking forward, the road to a comprehensive peace remains uncertain and highly sensitive. While Trump's re-entry into the global diplomacy has certainly shaken the status quo and injected momentum into stalled negotiations, fears persist among Ukrainian officials and some European diplomats that he may pressure Kiev into accepting a deal that could freeze the conflict among the current battle lines, effectively recognizing Russian gains. The meeting between President Trump and President Zelenskiy was cordial, with none of acrimony that accompanied their last meeting in the Oval Office earlier this year. There was also a discussion of a three-way meeting between Trump, Zelenskiy and Putin. The proposal has been advocated previously by the US and Ukrainian leaders, but it has not been agreed by Russia.
Good to see you. Yeah, likewise. Thank you. Thank you.
How are you? Nice to see you. That's a good way of doing it.
Not too long. That's a very 2, 1. Yeah.
Thank you for the invitation and thank you very much for your efforts, personal efforts to stop killings and stop this war.
It's an honor to have the president of Ukraine with us. Thank you for all of the wonderful things that made success, and thank you very much.
Stop this war. We spoke about it and we will speak more about security guarantees. This is very important.
Pipeline security guarantees.
Complicated negotiations. And to be honest,
We're united. So that's why it's a very good
2 years to have a peace which is the only Ukrainians who own the property, but it's also
That's a pretty unusual thing.
Nonetheless, the presence of European leaders at this summit strengthened Zelenskyy's position and sent a signal to Moscow that Ukraine does not stand alone. A trilateral meeting between Trump, Putin and Zelensky could occur within weeks, but the path to peace still hinges on the resolution of the fundamental issue: a credible security, guarantees and just handling of occupied territories and humanitarian violations.
Killing and stop the war in Ukraine. We're all working for the same goal. Very simple goal. We want to stop the killing, get this settled. I've just had the honor of being with President Zelenskiy and all of the discussions that we've had. We covered a lot of territory. And I spoke indirectly with President Putin today. We're going to call President Putin right after this meeting. I'm sure we're going to have a solid meeting, good meeting, maybe a great meeting, and we're going to try and work out a trilat after that and see if we can get it finished, put this to sleep, because this is not since the Second World War has there been anything like this. So I'm honored to welcome NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who's a great gentleman, great political leader in Europe generally, but now he's the NATO Secretary General, and you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much, Mark.
In our hearts, they have been online before yesterday, and etc. So a lot of countries on the side of Ukraine, our people, and all of us want to finish this war, stop Russia, and stop this war. We spoke about it, and we will speak more about security guarantees. This is very important that the United States gives such strong signal and is ready for security guarantees. The second point, or maybe the first, the humanitarian direction, very important to exchange all the prisoners, and I think that President will help, and I was very thankful to your wife again, Mr. President, for the letter about our abducted children, and I hope that really it can be a historic role for the people to bring kids back to the families and be happy and get the families back, yeah. Yes, this is so important, and I'm happy that we discussed this track with the President Trump, and I hope that we will find decisions. And then what is very important, that all the sensitive things, territorial, etc., we will discuss on the level of leaders during trilateral meeting, and President Trump will try to organize such meeting, and he said that he will come or not come. Ukraine will be happy if you will
both want me there, I will be there. Yeah,
yeah,
you know
thank you.
Whether this diplomatic push results in real progress or reinforces existing tensions will depend upon what happens next, particularly if a Trump-Putin-Zelensky trilateral format becomes a reality. Let's wait and watch. Till now, keep watching CVR News English.